Welcome to my YouTube channel. To all of my returning subscribers, thank you very much for your support. You guys are awesome. And if you are dropping by for the first time, please like this video, subscribe to this channel, smash the bell notification so that you get updated whenever I post new content. Thank you very much as you do so. So in this week's video, we discuss how to use sensitivity labels in Microsoft Purview to protect your data. I will define sensitivity labels. We'll talk about what they can do. We'll talk about label policies and how to apply those policies. We then go ahead to look at how sensitivity labels integrate with other Microsoft technologies, notably with technologies like Copilot, Azure Information Protection, and Microsoft Information Protection SDK. I will now move on to the console to see how we can create these labels, how to apply policies. We'll see how to apply labels to emails and to documents, and then we'll see how to create auto labeling policies. So this promises to be a very exciting session. Please stay with us, and of course, you are going to learn one thing or two. Thank you very much for watching. So welcome to this video where we are going to see how to use sensitivity labels in Microsoft Purview to protect your data. So let's get started. This is how we're going to proceed. We're going to introduce the concept and the topics. We're going to define sensitivity labels. We're going to see what a sensitivity label can do. We'll talk about label policies and label scopes. We'll see how to edit and delete sensitivity labels. We'll see how sensitivity labels works with different kinds of Microsoft solutions, starting with Copilot, and then we'll move on to Azure Information Protection and how it also works in Microsoft Information Protection SDK, and then we're going to conclude before we get into the second part of the video. So let's get started. So we are going to be exploring the features and the benefits of using sensitivity labels in Microsoft 365 in order to protect our data. So what is a sensitivity label? Well, a sensitivity label is a way to classify and protect your data based on its level of confidentiality and sensitivity. And you can apply sensitivity labels to documents, to emails, and other types of content in Microsoft 365 apps and services. And it could also help you to comply with data protection regulations, to enforce your organization's policies, and to protect data loss or data exfiltration. So further, sensitivity labels can do a number of things. For example, it can apply encryption across an access restriction to your data. It could require you to provide a password. It could block external sharing. It could also revoke access after a certain period of time. Now also, it can apply visual markings to your data, such as watermarks, headers, or footers. And all of these things will indicate the level of sensitivity and the ownership. It could apply content metadata to your data, such as retention labels, sensitivity terms, or other custom properties to allow data discovery and governance. It could apply protection to your data across different devices and platforms such as Windows, Mac, iOS, Android, and even in web browsers. And then it can apply protection to your data across third-party apps and services such as Dropbox, Gmail, Box, and of course it will be doing that through the use of Microsoft Cloud App Security Connector. You could also protect your data in containers, such as in themes, in Microsoft 365 groups, or SharePoint sites by applying sensitivity labels to the containers and inheriting the protection settings to the content within those containers. You could also extend sensitivity labels to Power BI. You'll be doing that by applying sensitivity labels to the Power BI datasets or the reports and the dashboards. And you could also enforce protection and governance policies by doing so. So what are these policies? What are the label policies about? Now, label policies are a way to manage and deploy your sensitivity labels to your users and devices. You can create label policies in Microsoft 365 Compliance Center. You could also do that in Azure Portal. Now, these policies can allow you to do a number of things. For example, you can assign sensitivity labels to specific users or devices, such as departments, teams, or even regions. And then you can configure default labels and mandatory labels for your users or devices. You could apply a label automatically, or you could require a user to choose a label before sending or saving a file. Further, you can configure settings and options for your labels, such as allowing or preventing users from changing or removing labels, or showing and hiding labels in the app region. And then you could also monitor and audit the usage and activity of your labels. You can generate reports, alerts. You could also generate logs as well. So let's look at the scope of those labels. Now, label scopes are a way to define the availability and visibility of your sensitivity labels for your users and for your devices. You can create label scopes in the Microsoft 365 Compliance Center, or you can create them in Azure Portal. And these scopes can help you do a number of things. First, you can create global labels that are available to all users and all devices in your organization. You can create tenant labels that are available to specific tenants or subdomains in your organization. You could create labels available to specific groups or users or devices also within your organization. And then you could also create personal labels that are available to individual users or devices within your organizations as well. So you could also do some deleting or editing of these labels. Now, you can delete or edit sensitivity labels in the Microsoft 365 Compliance Center or in the Azure Portal. Now, editing or deleting labels can affect the existing content that has the labels that have been applied. And you can do a number of things as well. For example, you can edit the name, the description, the settings or options of a sensitivity label, and then you can choose whether to update the existing content with new label configuration. Also, you can delete a sensitivity label and choose whether to remove the label from existing content or keep the label and its protection settings on the existing content. And then you can restore even a label that has been deleted and choose whether to apply the label to the existing content that had the label before the deletion. So how does sensitivity labels work with other kinds of Microsoft solutions? We're going to be starting with Copilot. Now, we've already seen that sensitivity labels can be crucial components of data governance because they will be providing a systematic approach to classifying and protecting sensitive information. And when they are integrated with tools like Microsoft Copilot, these labels will enhance the ability to reference information securely and efficiently. Now, in these cases, the most restrictive labels, when made visible, will be serving as a constant reminder for users to adhere to data governance policies. Then Microsoft Copilot basically is designed to respect the hierarchy of these labels, ensuring that the label with the highest priority is automatically selected, thereby streamlining the data protection process. Now, furthermore, Copilot's capabilities will extend to detecting sensitivity labels and warning users of potential policy violations to now go ahead and apply the appropriate labels and then protect the data through encryption, whether it is locally stored or shared across platforms. Now, this can be useful because it not only suggests the code that is compatible with the defined sensitivity label, but it also maintains the integrity of data governance practices. Now, with Azure Information Protection, sensitivity labels can also help as well. Now, Azure Information Protection is a cloud-based service that helps you to classify and protect your data across your organization. And it can help you do a number of things. First, it can allow you to create and manage sensitivity labels and label policies in the appropriate places, such as in Azure Portal, and it can allow you to synchronize them with the Microsoft 365 Compliance Center. You could also protect your data with encryption, with access control and usage rights, and then you can use Azure Key Vault to manage your encryption keys. Then you can track and monitor your data activities and usage, and you can use Azure Monitor to generate reports and alerts. And you can integrate all of these things, of course, all your data protection with other Azure services such as Azure Storage, Azure Data Lake, Azure SQL Database, and Azure Synapse Analytics. Now, it could also work with Microsoft Information Protection SDKs. Now, Microsoft Information Protection SDK is a set of tools and libraries that allows you to integrate sensitivity labels and data protection into your own apps and solutions. And it can also allow you to do a number of things. You can apply sensitivity labels and protection to your data programmatically. You'll be doing that using any language of your choice, such as C++, C#, Java, or Python. Then you could also read and write sensitivity labels and data protection metadata to your data. You can do that using various file formats and protocols. You could also access and use sensitivity labels and label policies from the Microsoft 365 Compliance Center or from the Azure portal. And then you can extend and customize your data protection scenarios, such as using custom encryption algorithms, custom actions, or custom UI. So we see here that sensitivity labels in Microsoft 365 serves as a cornerstone for data governance, which will be allowing organizations to classify and protect their data while maintaining productivity and collaboration. Now, these labels, as we've seen, can be applied across various contents, such as documents, emails, and even containers like Teams, Microsoft 365 groups, and SharePoint sites. For example, a confidential label might encrypt a document, might apply a watermark, while maybe a general label can simply add a header or a footer. Now, all of these flexibilities will support a wide range of scenarios, from protecting sensitive information in Office apps across different platforms and devices to securing content in third-party apps and services with Microsoft Defender for cloud apps. Now, we can see too that sensitivity labels can be configured also to automatically apply protection settings, which will be ensuring that data is consistently safeguarded as it moves within and outside the organization, thereby securing your digital asset. So, by using sensitivity labels, we can have peace of mind and we can know that our data is protected and our systems and business is secure. So, we are going to be moving now into the lab environment, where we are going to be showcasing how to do some of the things we've discussed in this aspect of the lab. So please watch on. It promises to be much more interesting and engaging. Thank you very much as you do that. All right, we are now in the Microsoft Purview portal, and we want to get started with creating sensitivity labels. Now, but there are a few things we need to know. One of it is that when we want to start to create sensitivity labels using our organizational data, there are a few things we need to know. There are a number of steps we need to follow. First, we've got to, first of all, create the labels. So we want to create the label, and then we want to name the labels appropriately. And that should always be in accordance to the organization's classification taxonomy. Typically, organizations will have the way they name different items, different objects. We want to stick with that, and that's very important. Now, the other thing is we want to also define what each label can do, because we want to give our labels descriptive names. There are description boxes available that allows us to do that. And then after that, we want to publish our labels after we've done the other two. Now, there are some things we also need to be aware of. One of it is licensing. Well, there are different subscriptions that support sensitivity labels, and we want to be aware of all of these subscriptions. Now, the appropriate licenses that will allow for manual sensitivity labeling includes the Microsoft 365 E5, A5, G5, E3, A3, G3, F1, and F3 business premium licenses. Of course, we want to also, there are other types of licenses as well, but at the minimum, these are some of the licenses that will support the creation of sensitivity labels. Now, the other thing we also want to be aware of is there are permissions that are required for us to be able to create and manage sensitivity labels. I want to assign these permissions to the members of the appropriate teams, which will usually be the compliance team, and they will be the ones saddled with the responsibility of creating sensitivity labels. And for us to be able to access the admin portal to create and manage sensitivity labels, there are a number of roles that will allow us to do so. And one of the roles will include the information protection admin, information protection analyst, information protection investigator, and information protection readers. Okay, so you want to be aware of all of those kinds of things as well. Those are very, very important points we need to be aware of as we want to embark on creating the sensitivity labels. Okay, so having said that, we want to now go ahead and begin to create the sensitivity labels. I am currently logged in as the global admin, but again, that is an overkill. You shouldn't always use the highest permission level when you want to do these things within a production environment. So you need to be aware. A lot of those roles that I've mentioned are one of the roles you want to use. Okay, so we are in the Microsoft Purview portal, and we want to go ahead and create sensitivity labels. So we want to scroll down to information protection. I'll go ahead and click on information protection, and then I'll go ahead and select labels, and we want to start with the process of creating a label. So it tells us here that you should extend labeling to assets in the data map and all of that. You have the option of turning it on, and it tells you that when you turn this on, you'll be able to apply your sensitivity labels to files and schematized data assets in Microsoft Purview data map and Microsoft Defender for Cloud. So you have the option of turning it on, but for now, that is a bit out of scope for what we want to do, so I'm going to leave it turned off. So to start to create a sensitivity label, I'll go ahead and hit on the create a label button. Now it takes us to the name, to the new sensitivity label screen, and it tells us here the name of the label your admins will use in compliance portal, and it gives us tips. For example, we have a maximum of 64 characters, and the following characters aren't supported, so you want to be aware of that. So I want to give it a name. I'll call it I'll just call it organizational data, for example. And then I want to give you a display name. I'll say this is a sensitivity. I'll just give it I'll just call it organizational data label, for example. And then you have the option of choosing priority and choosing a description. I'm not going to leave the priority the way it is. I'll just give it a description such as this is a label for my organizational data, just to do some form of self-documentation. Now you can give it both a description for users and a description for admin. I'll just copy this and just add for admin just to differentiate it. So we are now we've finished with the new sensitivity label on the label details page, and after that, of course, I want to go ahead and click on next. So now in the next screen here, it tells me to define the scope for this label, and it also tells me that labels can be applied directly to items, can be applied to files, to emails, to meetings, to containers, to Fabric and Power BI items, and all of that. Now, for the purposes of this demonstration, I am going to only apply this label to files and emails. So I'll just go ahead and uncheck the meeting option right there. So that's the only thing I want to do on that page. I'll go ahead and click on next. Now it tells me here to choose protection settings for the types of items I selected. I am going to just allow this to be as it is, so that when we are doing the demonstrate option, we are going to do that as well when we want to edit the label. So I'll go ahead and click on next. On the auto labeling for files and emails, I'll go ahead and click on next. For the define protection settings for groups and sites, I just go ahead and click on next. For the auto labeling for schematized data assets, which is a preview feature, I'll go ahead and click on next. And then it takes me to the review. Now, in the review screen, you still have the option of going to edit previous settings by just going ahead to click on any of the edit links, which is going to take you back to that setting where you can make all of the corrections that you require, and then you can come back and do what you want. So for now, for the purposes of this demonstration, this is all I am going to do. So I'll go ahead and hit on the create label button here, and it's reviewing my settings. It's submitting the settings, and once it's done, it goes ahead to tell me to publish my sensitivity label was created, but I have the option of publishing. But this time around, I don't want to create a policy yet, because I want to demonstrate how that policy is going to be created. So I'll click on don't create a policy yet, and then I'll hit on done, and my sensitivity label is created, and it's pretty much a straightforward step. And we can see here that, see, I have created my sensitivity label called organizational data label. So that's how straightforward it is. So we created a label called organizational data label, and that's the label there. Now, the next thing we want to talk about is sub-labels and why we might want to create sub-labels. Now, what sub-labels allows us to do is that it allows us to group one or more labels below a parent label that we can see within an Office app. Now, if we have a label like we do here, and our label is called organizational data label, we can go ahead to group, to put other labels beneath this label. So these sub-labels are simply a way to present labels to our users in logical groups. We need to be aware of a few things about sub-labels, and that is they do not inherit any settings from their parent label, except maybe for the label color, which in this case is not applicable because we did not give any color to our labels. And again, when you publish a sub-label for a user, the user can then apply that sub-label to content and to containers, but they cannot apply just the parent label. Now, you want to also know that you do not choose a parent label as the default label, or you do not also configure a parent label to be automatically applied. If you do, the parent label can't be applied. So those are the things we need to be aware of before we create a sub-label. So we want to go ahead and create a sub-label underneath our organizational label. So I'll just go ahead and select the ellipsis here, which is the actions menu. I'll just go ahead and click on it, and I want to click on create a sub-label. So that's how we want to proceed. So it tells us again, we should give the sub-label a name. I start the new sensitivity label wizard and all of that. So we want to give our sub-label a name, again abiding by some of the policies that we saw previously, also giving us the same maximum number of characters and excluding the same type of character. So we'll just give it a name. We'll just call it, employee data HR, for example. Or I'll just give it a display name. This is a HR related sub label of the organizational data SL, for example, for sensitivity label. So again, it gives us, though maybe I probably would have exceeded the org. I'll just give it org label. All right. So I just allow everything to be the way it is. I'll give it a description here. I'll say this is a sub label of the for example. Okay, so I have a few typos. I'll just correct them, and then we will can give it a description and give a description for admins. Now, this is the point where I noticed that since we did not put color in the original label, we cannot put a label color in the sub label. So I'll go ahead and click on next, and that takes us to next again. And as we did in the previous one, I want to just define the scope for files and emails. I'll click on next, and that takes me to the choose a protection setting. I'll just go ahead and select this time the control access option. So I'll go ahead and select the control access option, and then I'll click on next. Now it takes me to the access control page. In this case, I want to configure access control settings, which is selected by default here. And then I want to do a number of configurations. Now, for the assigned permissions now, or let users decide, I want to go ahead and ensure that assigned permissions now is the what is selected. There are options, other options as well. Of course, you have the option of letting users assign permissions when they apply the label. So I'll go ahead and allow assign permissions now to be the choice that is applicable. Then under user access to content expires, I don't want content to expire. Under allow offline access, I want to allow offline access only for a number of days. In this case, we can specify up to 100 days, but in this case, I want to just apply access for 2 weeks. So 2 weeks is 14 days. So now it takes us to the assigned permissions to specific users and groups. Under assign permissions to specific users and groups, I want to click on assign permissions link here, and it takes me to a flyout menu where we can assign permissions. So on the assign permissions flyout menu, I want to select the add any authenticated user. So I'll go ahead and click on add any authenticated user, and I want to go ahead and click on save to add the permissions. We can see here only to authenticated users. And then I want to go ahead and click on next. That takes me to the auto labeling for files and emails. I'm going to allow it the way it is and click on next. It takes me to the define protection settings for groups and sites. I'm going to click on next again. It takes me to auto labeling for schematized data assets, which is a preview setting. I'll select next. And then that takes us to the review the settings screen. Of course, again, like we had before, we have the option of editing any of the configurations that we want to change before we go ahead and create the label. So I want to go ahead and click on create label. And of course, the process of label creation is underway. And also, I don't want to create the policy yet. So I'll click on do not create a policy yet. And then I'll click on done. So now, one thing quickly comes to mind. We have the organizational data label. And if we go ahead and expand it, we will see the sub label that we created there under the org label. So the next thing we want to do having created a label and a sub-label will be to go ahead and publish the label. All right, so we are now ready to publish our labels. So I'm still in the information protection area, and I still have my labels being displayed. So I'll go ahead and select both the label and the sub-label, and I'll click on Publish Labels. Now notice that it takes me to sensitivity labels to publish directly because I chose it and then selected Publish, but I could have also selected Publish and come this way here to come and click on the labels I want to publish. But I'm going to cancel this since I've done that already. So the next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and click on Next, and it takes me to the admin units. And of course, I didn't define an admin unit like we saw in the last uh, exercise, so I won't have anyone to select. But note again that if you want to have an admin unit, you should have created it already in Microsoft Entra ID. And also take note again, for emphasis, that you would require the appropriate license, such as the E5 license, to be able to configure admin units. So take note of that. So I'll go and click on Next. It takes me to the users and groups. And here I want to ensure that users and groups are selected. That's important. It is in this case. And then I want to go ahead and click on Next. And then it takes me to the policy settings here. I'm just going to allow everything the way it is. I'm going to go ahead and click on Next. And then, of course, it takes me to the default settings. The default here is none. I'll go ahead and click on Next again. Apply. It takes me to the default settings for emails. Same. I want to ensure that default label, same as document, is selected. I'll click on Next. It takes me to the Apply default label to meetings and calendar events. I want to go ahead and click on Next here again. It takes me to apply a default label to Fabric and Power BI content. I want to go ahead and click on Next. And then it prompts me to give my policy a name. Well, I'll just go ahead and give it a name here, and I can say I'll give it the organizational data policy. Okay, and I'll just give it a name here. I'll give it a description here, which is optional. All right, so I now have a description here. I want to go ahead and click on Next. And again, it takes us to the review and finish screen where we still have the option to go ahead and change whatever settings that we feel may not be appropriate. And then we want to go ahead and, if we are happy with what is going on, want to go ahead and hit on Submit. And the process of creating the policy is underway. It tells us that a new policy is created. But take note that it also tells us that it can take up to 24 hours to publish the labels to the selected users and apps and all of that. I want to go ahead and click on Done, and our policy is created. So we have created our sensitivity label. We went ahead and published the label, and it's now been a couple of hours since we published the label. So we are now ready to apply the label to a document. So to do that, I'll go to the Microsoft 365 portal. I'll go to, the Office portal, and I want to go ahead and open a new Word document. So I'll go ahead and open a blank document. And I'll just do a simulation here. I'll just create a file. I'll just create a file such as that one. And then I want to save the file. I'll go ahead and save the file as. I want to save a copy online. I want to give the file a name. I'll call it HR policy, for example, and I'll create a copy. So I now have the file, I have the document, and I want to go ahead and apply a sensitivity label. So I'll click on here, this icon here, which is sensitivity. I'll click on it, and we can see that that's the label that we created. I want to go ahead and apply the label to the document. So the label is applied. How do I know? If I click back here, I can see that we have a check mark next to the name of the label. So that means the label is now applied to the document. I could also go ahead and mail this document with the sensitivity label to another user. That's to do that, I'll go ahead and open Outlook. I'll open a new email. I'll just say, put the subject of the email, type in the body of the mail, and then I can insert the document. I'll just, after making the corrections, I'll make the corrections, and then I'll insert the document. I'll just put my cursor anywhere I want the document to be inserted. I'll go to the insert menu. I'll click on attach files, and we can see here that we have the HR policy document. So I'll go ahead and select it, and we can see it is attached. So I'll type the name of the recipient, and then I'll just go ahead and send. So we want to configure auto labeling. We want to create a sensitivity label that will auto label emails and documents that contain information related to GDPR specifically for the UK. So we are still in the Microsoft Purview portal. To do that, we will still go to the information protection area and we'll click on labels. And since I want to apply this label as a sub-label to one of the labels I created earlier on, I'll go to the label, in this case, the organizational data label. I'll click on the actions menu and select create sub-labels. Again, I'm going to give it a name such as the UK GDPR label, for example, and I'll give it a display name, and then I'll give a description. For example, I would say in the description, this label is automatically applied to documents and emails that contain sensitive information related to GDPR compliance for UK, for example. So that's description for the users. I'll just do the same thing. I'll just copy that and paste this to give the same description for admins. And I'll just scroll down. And remember that our original or parent sensitivity label did not include a label color. So, of course, these ones do not have that option as well. So I'll go ahead and click on next. And since I want to apply the label to files and emails, the scope will be files and emails. So I'll just uncheck meetings. And then I'll go ahead and click on next. For access control, of course, I'll just choose protection settings for the types of items you selected. I want to go ahead and click on next. I'm not going to be doing any setting here. And here is where there is interest. That is auto labeling for files and emails. I'll go ahead and click on the toggle switch to toggle it to on. So auto labeling for files and emails, I want to toggle it to on. That's very, very important. So in the detect content that matches these conditions, I want to set the auto labeling to, I want to add a condition, sorry. So I'll click on add conditions and I'll go ahead and click on content contains. Now in the detect content that matches these conditions section, I want to go ahead and add a condition and select sensitive info types. Now, since I am interested in UK related sensitive info type, I'll just do a search for UK and I'm going to select everything here. We can see that we have UK driver's license number, UK electoral roll number, UK health service number, and all of those details. I'll go ahead and click on add to be able to add all of that. So I'll scroll down and here it gives me an option of when content matches this content, these conditions, I beg your pardon. It says automatically apply the label and it gives me the option to specify a display message. I'll say this document or email contains sensitive information related to GDPR compliance for the UK and for the UK, for example, please review before sending. And that's okay. So I'll just put in that display message and I'll click on next. So on the define protection settings for groups and sites, nothing to do here. I'll click on next. On the auto labeling for schematized data assets, which is a preview setting, I'll click on next. And that takes me to the review your settings and finish. And in the review your settings and finish, I want to click on create label. So it takes me to your sensitivity label was created and all of that. I want to, for example, click on do not create a policy yet. And then I'll click on done. Okay, so it takes me back to the page for labels. So I want to go ahead and create a label. So I'll go ahead and select the label. I just come here. I'll select the labels I've not published. I'll select this one. and this one, and then I'll click on publish labels. So we can see that these are the labels that needs to be published. So I'll click on next. Of course, I did not create an admin unit, so it's publishing it to the full directory. I'll click on next. It's publishing it to users and groups. I'll click on next. And then under policy settings, of course, I'll just click on next. Apply to a default label to documents. I'll just click on next. Here too, I'll click on next. For the default settings for meetings and calendars, I'll click on next. For Power BI content and Fabric, I'll click on next. And then I'll give my policy a name. I'll call it UK GDPR policy. And then I'll give it a description. I'll say this policy is for content that contains GDPR related information for the UK, for example. And then I'll click on next. So it takes me to the review and finish screen. And then I'll go ahead and click on submit. So it tells me the UK, the new policy is created. I'll go ahead and click on done. So that takes us to the end of all of the demonstrations we have for today. We are going to be creating additional content as time goes on other related information. So thank you very much for staying up to this point, and see you in the next video.